morning, everyone. Absolute honour to speak to you all. You might be getting sick of spooks, and I won't talk about anything spooky during this session. Indeed, what I want to do is engage with you to use our imaginations and talk more about the future. In fact, perhaps compared to some of the things we've heard today, I want to stick up for the future a bit more, and I also want to stick up for science a bit more. It's absolutely my belief that the widespread age of machine learning and automation is coming, and not just coming, that it's undeniably imminent. And what I thought would be fun to explore is the question of whether smarter software that is better at problem solving and dealing with complex issues will be, on balance, a better thing for digital criminals or digital defenders. And if we're going to do that, of course, we should get into the question of what automated or augmented attacks might look like in future. But to get into this, I want to start by talking about complexity and thinking about complexity. If you walk into any sizable business here in London or around the globe, look around, talk to people, get a feel for what they do, and I think you'll be pretty quickly reminded of the absolute explosion in diversity, richness, and complexity of our digital economies. And when you add together accelerating change in consumer technology and enterprise technology, we're getting to the point where everyone and everything in our businesses is starting to behave in an increasingly unique way. And uniqueness is a nightmare for human-led traditional security approaches. And it's genuinely my belief that our defenders are starting to get outpaced, and this is going to get worse. Criminals are motivated and innovative for sure. We've heard a bit about that already. But fundamentally, there's an awful lot of places to attack these days. And this is getting worse. Customers, consumers, your board members, employees all want the latest technology that they can have in your business and the opportunities that come with it. In fact, I think coming here today is the greatest concentration of wearables I've ever seen. Maybe I need to spend more time in San Francisco. Yet the enterprise also has inertia, a really long tail of old stuff that needs to be maintained and protected. And often that old stuff is running your core business processes on it. And frustratingly, our computerized defenses are still incredibly specific. We have to tell them exactly what to do and exactly what to stop. What does this mean for defenders? Well, if you're a board member, I imagine quite often you sit there thinking, well, they should just suck it up, right? I mean, just get on with securing what we've got. But what does that mean? It means we want these people to internalize the complexity of all these different people in our business, all these different complex technologies. We expect them to imagine all possible future risks and possible future attacks. And if that wasn't hard enough, they then have to put a suite of protections in. But whatever you do, don't affect the business operations while you're putting that protection in. Try not to spend too much money. And ideally, we don't really want to affect innovation or flexibility for the future either. Unsurprisingly, this is impossible to get right 100% of the time. But something, if you only take one thing from this talk, what I'd like you to think is the real problem is that we're battling complexity, not that we're suffering from a situation where attackers are innately more clever than all of the defenders put together. But if we're battling complexity and the machine learning age is coming, well, what does that mean? Well, machine learning and automation are fundamental tools for dealing with complexity. When you get underneath what they are for, that's exactly what they're for. It's my personal belief we're nowhere near artificial intelligence yet, certainly not sci-fi style artificial intelligence, but that isn't going to stop us having amazing progress globally when we can solve harder and harder problems using software alone. It's only 2 years and 1 month since these guys got their first public license to drive on the roads. And it's now a completely mainstream idea in most parts of the world that self-driving cars are going to play a part in our shared future, no matter who that makes them. Now let's spend a little bit of time thinking about how the same sciences that make this thing work are going to affect our topic of cybersecurity. And because it's fun, let's start with thinking what automated attacks might look like. We know attackers have a many different range of approaches that they use for trying to find weaknesses in software, and some of those ways of finding weaknesses in software are automated. And once weaknesses are found, or as was mentioned earlier, bought from others, it's absolutely trivial right now to automate the search or scanning of the internet looking for companies where you can take advantage of that that weakness, however it's formed. Or you can simply sit there on popular websites, I imagine Wired is one of them, and wait for the bad guys to come to you, the good guys come to you and try and get them through the adverts. Greater complex problem-solving abilities in software will absolutely mean a substantial increase, in my belief, in the number of vulnerabilities found in software that we're already using on a daily basis. You may remember the rush to fix Heartbleed, an error in critically important encryption software used by nearly every business in the world. We should absolutely be bracing and thinking about our processes for how we would deal with a flurry of issues like that in the future. But there won't just be more attacks, and smarter software isn't just going to find more weaknesses, it's going to change the nature of attacks as well. Industry's starting to get used to the idea of ransomware, largely seen as a frustration where fast-acting malicious software can identify and encrypt your files and then extort you for money. We should definitely expect new extortionware. Perhaps it will be self-spreading across businesses, orchestrating itself, and then acting in a coordinated manner for maximum impact, all without talking to the outside criminal until it's too late to stop it. More interestingly, I suspect we'll see the automatic targeting of major assets. Visible and expensive assets, the sorts of things that really will affect your day-to-day operations and you'd pay to unlock pretty quickly. Depending on your business, that might be factory equipment. MRI scanners is often mentioned in healthcare, of course, but maybe it's your trading systems, your retail systems, or logistics. As a side note, we should expect this to happen in the home. I'm almost certain that the relatively poorly monetized sending of spam from hacked laptops or trying to turn Brian Krebs' website off is not going to be sufficiently lucrative in the future. But if you can pivot to taking out the things that consumers really care about in their household, I think you could make a lot of money. What will people lose their minds over? Well, certainly my family would pay to restore the smart TV if it stopped working. Say you've got a $500 TV, would you not pay the extortion of $100 to get that back under your control? And almost certainly, based on how we've seen automotive security be operated in the past, someone's going to wake up one morning to do the school run and find they can't start the car until they pay up a serious amount of bitcoins. Much more visible crimes than we're used to in the consumer space, and certainly much more painful. But I think even more interesting than this, and perhaps worst of all, self-learning systems are going to dramatically change trust attacks up and down supply chains. What do I mean by trust attack? Well, imagine you've got a piece of malware on your laptop that not can just access, but can read and truly understand your emails, your diary, your messaging systems, your address book, and can contextually contact other people, maybe their co-workers or customers, using your communication style exactly to spread itself. Maybe you've got an appointment to meet me on Tuesday. A piece of malware sees that, it understands it, shoots me an email and says, Dave, here's a map to the location where we're meeting. I didn't want you to get lost. If it uses exactly your communication style based on our previous dealings, am I going to open that? Absolutely I am, and of course there'll be a copy of the malicious payload inside it. Maybe we've been editing documents between us, whether online in collaboration software or just emailing them back and forth. One tiny edit, a mention in the email that the document's been updated, send it back to me. Am I going to open that? Absolutely. And this will explode across supply chains. If you can get to the point where malware is not looking like Nigerian princes anymore, but it's moving to you from people you trust, from their accounts, from their devices, using exactly their communication style as personalized to how they communicate with you, not how they communicate in general, then I think we're going to see a lot of damage done. And it doesn't have to spread mindlessly either. If we want to go after hard targets like a global bank, maybe after a specific celebrity, you can continue to spread without taking action, which might reveal that you're there until you get the right place to take access. That sounds a little bit familiar. Many of us will remember the stories of Stuxnet, the attacks against the Iranian centrifuges, spreading using different means and only taking action exactly at the point where they can do most harm. That might have been something that required nation-state capabilities before, but widespread learning and smart software will put that in the hands of everybody. Is this far away? I don't think so. I genuinely think if Google DeepMind ever goes bad, then we'll be in real trouble. I think they could do that now. I think they could train those neural networks and those deep learning networks offline in the cloud and then put it in tiny pieces of malware that basically screws the entire economy. Let's hope that they won't. But when we talk about screwing serious businesses, smart software also can have a dramatic impact on what the maximum damage you can do to a company is. And if it was me and I wanted to have maximum impact on an organization, then I would move away from visible and obvious dramatic incidents that a company can see and clean up. I've been lucky to spend some time recently with oil and gas firms, and in talking to them, I was saying, if you want to ruin an oil and gas firm in the future, then I wouldn't be disabling the oil rigs. I'm sure someone's going to notice if an oil rig isn't working today and no oil's coming out of it, and there will be mechanical workarounds to go and fix it and allow them to respond. Instead, what I think we should do if we join together in this criminal enterprise is quietly and continuously change the geophysical survey data, the data that they use on which to identify where to buy drilling rights. If we do that, if we continue to change the data that these people make decisions on, strategic decisions that cost millions of dollars, and they spend millions more dollars putting oil rigs in the wrong place that come up drier than expected, and they can't understand why because it correlates with the data that they have, I think we'll be able to do some long-term harm. And there's some cool technical choices here. If you're a nerd like I am, maybe we think we can hide in the database. That would be pretty cool. They're probably unlikely to look inside the database for quite a long period of time. But as was touched on earlier, maybe we're better off attacking the underlying IoT itself. The automated fleets of $100 submersible sensors that get towed through the ocean in order to collect this data in the first place. I guarantee those things aren't running antivirus. $100, they're probably not doing very much computation at all. And they certainly haven't had the full attention of the security community in looking at them and helping them to be hardened and well defended. I talk about oil and gas because it's usually different to the companies that are in these rooms. But it's easy to imagine these ideas happening in any industry. Certainly changing bank balances might really affect the confidence you have in a bank. But actually, as we look to the future, how many businesses will be making strategic decisions based on data? I think it will be all of them. Perhaps enough of the depressing stuff. What will smart software mean for defenders, and how's it going to help? Well, we should absolutely expect substantial improvements in the reasoning and decision-making ability of traditional ideas. Better firewalls, absolutely. Better antivirus or something similar to it, absolutely. Data warehouses that can make decisions about how you're interacting with them and say, hey, Dave, sorry, you've had too much data today or you're behaving too strongly. But excitingly, there are also fundamental new approaches. Anomaly detection's been discussed a couple of times already today, but we can go a step further. We can have full immune systems for our businesses that don't just look for things that are a little bit strange in single dimensions of behavior, but fundamentally understand exactly the normal behavior of every device, every person, every relationship between them, whether that's conventional IT or something strange. Why is this useful? Well, even if defenses are getting better, you still want a last chance to catch something that's slipped past your defenses. Also exciting is the idea that computers are going to be able to talk to us in a way that's significantly less frustrating than they do right now. We should be able to move to the point where we've got intuitive storytelling systems, that when they want to let you know that there's a problem and you've got to do something about it, maybe they show you visually, maybe they have a narrative conversation with you, maybe even an interactive conversation with you to allow you to quickly, truly comprehend what's happening without having to sit through 10,000 alerts or trying to make sense of some pivot table of a million rows of data in your head. But humans being involved in that decision process is of course not going to be enough. When we've got real problem-solving machines, we're going to need them to intelligently respond at machine speed. Absolutely, fast-moving attacks need to be countered very quickly indeed. Ransomware, you don't want to find out the next day in a nice 3D interface like this that, hey, all your files are gone, sorry about that, but at least I caught it. You want these things to make really smart decisions. And you want them to make smart decisions in context of your business that don't disable your business because you've got a problem that's starting to spread. Ransomware is a great idea of things to spot. We talked about those extremely terrifying self-spreading emails. It'd be nice to catch those before they hit inboxes. It'd be nice to isolate any incident in the network if it's out of hours and allow the security team to come in next morning and still have a chance of cleaning that up and doing something about it. And of course, interrupting the activities of ever more ingenious, disaffected insiders is going to be really important. They might be using iMessage, Slack, WhatsApp, whatever, uploading data to their home broadband connections today, but there's no way we can imagine what they'll be doing this time next year. And crucially, we can't imagine it because those things change at consumer speed, not enterprise speed. But fundamentally, it doesn't matter that we can't imagine the attacks of the future, nor future criminal business models. That's okay too. Once we get to the point where we've got defenses that can recognize the strange, we can start to have some home turf advantage again. This is, of course, just starting to scratch the surface about what some of these scientific ideas will do. But what I want to end with is touching back on that idea of complexity. Complexity is going to continue to explode, I have no doubt in that. And machine learning and advanced mathematics are fundamental tools for handling complexity. And it's genuinely my belief that if you stare at them long enough, most problems in cybersecurity turn into complexity problems eventually. And if we can get to the point where attackers can harness those technologies, defenders can harness those ideas, those scientific improvements, and we can start solving complexity problems, then we're going to make tremendous progress in the defense industry. And crucially, we're going to make progress in a way that further developments in machine learning, further developments in automation and AI aren't going to help the attackers equally. When you've got a self-defending network that can truly respond to what's strange, what's left for attackers if they can't do anything that looks strange? And I fundamentally believe that this is the first time that we've had a asymmetrical development in the underlying theory, where we've got something that actually helps defenders substantially more than attackers, and that's going to be really important. Well, of course, there is an underlying theme here, and that underlying theme is we've still got to keep up. We've talked already about companies that become further and further behind in their defenses or lost credentials from a long time ago. As we move forwards, if innovative attackers, innovative criminals continue to make use of some of these ideas, but the wider economy does not, then we're going to have a real problem, no matter how optimistic we are for the future. And fundamentally, we're still in a zone, even in the medium term, where the arms race continues. Thanks very much.
Dave, there was a Presbyterian minister in the 1700s called Thomas Bayes, and Mike Lynch, one of your investors, used some of Bayes' ideas in his previous business, Autonomy, and he's now using them inside Darktrace. Explain a bit about how you work and the statistical underpinning of a lot of the work you do.
If only I had 2 hours on a whiteboard, I could really go to town on this. Bayes is a pretty complicated piece of mathematics, even if it has been around from the 1700s, and most people don't want to see any mathematical functions. But at its lowest level, what Bayes is doing is saying, let's constantly revisit our assumptions in light of new evidence. Or put differently, we've got systems now that can change their mind about something they already believed based on things that have happened in the recent past. And that's absolutely vital when you want to try and make sense of massive sets of complex data, because what we've had in the past is machines that make decisions very quickly and then forget all about everything that's going on. And actually what you see with attacks and what you see with malicious insiders is you can't just make binary decisions and say, should Dave have this file right now or not? You've got to analyze things in long-reaching context. And so we use those underlying theories very hugely. We actually use them to make sense of about a dozen different machine learning approaches underneath them that are basically feeding up beliefs into the Bayes theory to make different decisions. And these ideas are going to start to affect lots of industries. It's not going to be something that's unique to us, but machines that can change their minds, that's pretty exciting, and it was a pretty important step as we move forwards into what machine learning can do for us as a society.
And do you call Darktrace an AI business?
It's something that we discuss a lot as AI becomes more rooted in mainstream discussion. I'm not sure that's where we're going with it. To be honest, I guess it depends how people start to use the term AI in the same way that cyber's been adopted. But Darktrace is not doing anything that's going to turn into Skynet and take over the world. And I think, for most people, AI is still a thing where something's self-aware. So right now we're still a machine learning company, but we'll see how people use the words in future.
And you mentioned Google DeepMind, which is trying to solve general artificial intelligence, like building the big brain. And you said, if it were to go bad, this is what the rogue AI could do. Is there any evidence that somewhere some people are now creating the rogue AI to automate the delivery of ransomware demands and other nefarious things?
We're definitely seeing the emergence of smarter and smarter decision-making software in attacks. So attacks that try one thing, and if it doesn't work out, try something different, and if that doesn't work, try something different again. No evidence at all that there's self-aware malicious software roaming around ready to overthrow us pesky humans, but and I think that's a long way away. But the techniques themselves, especially that idea of blending into normal human speech and blending into normal trust relationships, are going to be really, really painful for us as an industry when we've spent so long trying to train people not to click on dodgy emails, and every dodgy email is going to look near perfect.
Final quick question. One specific action that people here should go back to their offices and implement?
Well, fundamentally, I believe that if you can't identify what's unusual and changing in your business, then you're in a position where you can never truly understand your business. And the nod to the future is complexity is getting so high, you have to have machines that do that for you. But right now, if nobody's looking, whether it's human or machine, for things that are unusual and different, then you'll never catch the things that have been talked about in the past. And some of Adrian's examples right at the start are brilliant examples of that.
Thank you, Dave Palmer, and for everybody in a great first session.